I sat near the window, watching kids laugh and play as they showed off their costumes. Parents lingered, not too far, enjoying the unusually warm Halloween. After last year, parents wouldn't allow kids to be left unsupervised on this night. For a moment, my heart ached as I thought about my brother. He would have turned 8 today. Halloween was a family favorite. Candy, cake, and presents, all in one night. A knock at the door brought a smile to my face as I climbed to my feet. Even from inside, I could hear the excited giggles that were barely muffled by the wooden door. I grabbed the unnecessarily large bowl, filled to the brim with candy, before I swung open the door. "Trick or treat!" the kids screamed before I even had the door completely open. "Happy Halloween!" I cheered as I held out the bowl for them. "You all look so scary," I added dramatically, earning a few giggles. The kids all but attacked the bowl in my hands before they ran across the yard, aiming for the house next door. One parent stayed, one I had been very familiar with. Sarah's little boy and my brother were inseparable before the accident. "Taylor, it's so good to see you." I smiled and moved to hug her before I pulled back in confusion. Her son Jax hadn't been in the group of kids. "What are you doing here? Where's Jax?" "I just wanted to see how you and your parents were holding up. My husband took Jax to the next town over. He was already upset about not being able to go out with Alec tonight." "We're doing okay. They went to stay in a hotel tonight. They didn't want to have to watch kids come to the door and know Alec wasn't one of them. I hope Jax isn't too upset. Hopefully it'll get easier." "For all of us," she agreed. Her tone was sad, and for a moment I thought I was going to turn into a hysterical crying mess. Thankfully, a second group of kids ran up, and Sarah quickly said her goodbyes. I did the same small exchange with this group that I had with the one before quickly slipping back inside. After a moment's hesitation, I flipped off the porch light and closed the curtains. I should have gone with my parents. They were right. This was too hard. Once settled on the sofa, I ordered a pizza and started a movie. I needed something to drown out the noise from outside. Hopefully next year would be easier. The sound of the doorbell made me jump, and I scrambled to find the cash my parents had left me. I muttered a few choice words when the bell rang a second time. Surely a pizza man could wait 60 seconds. "I'm coming," I called when the bell rang a third time. Cash in hand, I swung open the door and froze. It wasn't a teenage pizza boy like I had been expecting. It was a little boy with familiar wide green eyes and a round face, complete with a mop of dark hair. It was the same face that I hadn't seen since the funeral. He was even wearing the same costume that he had worn the year before. The very same costume that he had been in when we had to identify his body. "Trick or treat!" "Alec?" My voice was a wavering mess as I tried to make sense of what was happening in front of me. "Hurry up, Alec. Everyone's going to bed." I shifted my stare to the woman that stood on the sidewalk, just off the brick path that led to our porch. She wasn't anyone I had ever seen before, and this was a small town. Everyone knew everyone. When she saw me staring at her, her lips stretched into a coy smile before she spoke again. "Come along, Alec. I don't think she has any candy for you." "Wait!" I cried when the boy turned to walk away. "Don't worry, Tay-Tay. I'll be fine," Alex said with a smile that was far too wide to be natural. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded. Those words were the same words Alec had told me last year. Those had been the very last words he had ever said to me before he left to go trick-or-treating for the very last time. The woman matched Alec's stretched grin as they both stared at me in silence. My heart was pounding in my ears as the silence stretched between us. "Say goodbye, Alec." "Goodbye, Tay-Tay," Alec said. His voice was wrong, garbled like he was gurgling water. I reached my hand out to pull him back, away from the stranger who seemed far too unusual to be safe, only to immediately snatch it back. Water ran from his mouth and the whites of his eyes filled with red. His mouth opened in a gurgling scream that made my stomach sink to my feet as the noise pierced the air. Louder and louder the scream became, and I expected the neighbors to come out and see what was happening, but no one came. I put my hands over my ears, trying to muffle it as best I could. Alex's face was contorted now. The mouth was inhumanly wide, and bloody tears flowed from his eyes, matching the water coming from his mouth. His skin was now slightly pruned and gray, the way he had looked when we identified him. I fell to my knees as my vision filled with spots, but still the sound persisted. The last thing I saw before the spots consumed my vision was Alex standing over me, still screaming, as the woman placed her hands on his shoulder. The girl in the mirror. I was about the age of 13 when this story took place. I lived in an old house just on the outside of a large city and was surrounded by cornfields and forests. I lived there all of my life before this happened. It was a dreary summer night, which is mostly normal for the place that I live. But on this particular night, something just felt off. I'd come home from soccer practice around 6 p.m., and my parents always had me in bed by 8. The night went on as usual. I ate dinner, played with my little sister, and did some weightlifting before bed. I got into bed around 7:45. The story will make better sense if I tell you some things about me. I'm a restless sleeper. I toss and turn and get up periodically through the night. And I've always had a fascination with the afterlife. Okay, back to the story. I'm not sure exactly what time I fell asleep, but I didn't really have my usual episodes through the night. This was the first night I'd slept peacefully in years. I was suddenly woke by a strange noise coming from the bathroom of my bedroom. Since I had used the bathroom anyways, I decided to check it out. I thought it might be a mouse or a bat since we live in the country and the house is old and has holes in the older walls. I went into the bathroom. I didn't see anything, so I proceeded on with what I had to do. Once I was finished, I washed my hands and my face, and when I was washing my face, I looked up at the large mirror that overhangs my sink. Since there was still water in my eyes, my vision is blurry, and I couldn't really see much. But I thought I saw something behind me. But I thought it was just my own mind playing tricks on me. I dried my face off and looked up at the mirror again. Right behind me, there was a little girl, clutching my body almost as if she was hiding from something. Her ghostly outline scared me at first, but as I kept looking, I could tell whatever was scaring her was coming from the basement. So I walked to my basement door and opened it slightly at first, because I was very scared of what might be behind it. This being said, I've lived in this house my entire life and have never been in the basement. My dad mentioned to me that it had 3 separate parts, all separated by small windows that you could barely fit through. So I walked down the basement steps and got to the bottom where the light switch was. I turned it on, and it all seemed like it was okay. That's until I heard what sounded like crying from one of the other parts of the basement. In my mind, I was thinking, screw this, but in my heart I knew I had to see what it was. So I ventured through the part of the basement, and the light couldn't reach the other side, where the other room was. It was pitch black. I still heard the crying, but since it was so dark, I couldn't see anything. Something gave me the urge to go into the far corner of the room, because the way the moonlight reflected off the floor, you could kind of see with what little light you had. I walked over to the corner and stared directly into the middle of the room. There, in the middle of the room, was a chair. It had shackles for the feet and what looked like to be some kind of restraint for the arms. That's when I noticed there was someone sitting in the chair. I walked closer, only to reveal that it was the same little girl that had been previously crying in the bathroom. She was also crying there. She had needles stuck in her arms, draining some kind of fluid into her. All was quiet until she started screaming. It was so high-pitched, I thought it sounded like a siren or something of that nature. She was saying words, but I couldn't make out anything she was saying until she spoke 5 words that made my heart sink. Get out, Daddy is coming. Not even thinking twice, I sprinted up the basement stairs, tripping over my own feet, and fell flat on my face once I reached the top. I got back up and ran to my parents' room. I told them what had happened. They went down there and checked everything out. I told them that there had been a chair with a little girl and she was screaming. They told me there was no chair in the basement and that there had never been 3 parts to the basement. Me, not believing them, I walked back down there, and the room that I had saw the chair in wasn't there. There had only ever been 2 parts of the basement, my dad told me. I told them what I saw and how I knew there had to be some mistake. But I never did see part of that basement again. I'm 18 now, and I decided to do some research on the house to see if there's any history that could have caused it. I came across an article of a man who had been arrested in 1868 for doing lab experiments on all of his children. After the man was arrested, the police found 12 skeletons of his children stuffed behind the basement stairs, under debris and concrete. Now that I finally moved out of that house, and that I finally have an answer as to what I saw that night, I'm finally at peace. But those 5 words still hang over me to this day. Get out, Daddy is coming.